Brunhilda of Austrasia. Brunhilda of Austrasia, 543–613, was a Visigothic princess who married into the Merovingian dynasty of the Franks, becoming the queen consort of the eastern kingdom of Austrasia. Following the brutal death of her sister due to a plot by Queen Fredegund in Neustria, Brunhilda used her position to scheme and accumulate power to outmaneuver her rival. The feud would expand into proxy wars across the Frankish realm. Brunhilda was the daughter of King Athanagild, 554–567, of Visigothic Spain, and is described as being a maiden beautiful in her person and well-behaved, 427, by medieval historian Gregory of Tours. At the time, King Sigebert I of Austrasia, 561–575, sought her out as his wife, and the two were married in 567. Upon their marriage, Brunhilda converted from her original Arian Christian faith to Catholicism. Brunhilda and Sigebert appear to have had a happy marriage, so much so that Sigebert's half-brother Chilperic I of Neustria, 561–584, became jealous and conspired to have a Visigothic wife for himself. Chilperic discarded his previous lover, a low-born woman named Fredegund, to marry Brunhilda's older sister Galswintha. However, Galswintha and Chilperic do not seem to have found the same happiness as Brunhilda and Sigebert. Galswintha was unhappy with the situation at the Neustrian court and even had Chilperic get rid of all of his concubines and mistresses. Discontent with his marriage, Chilperic reunited with Fredegund, and the two decided to take Galswintha out of the picture. Galswintha was strangled to death in her bed mysteriously while Chilperic quickly made Fredegund his new wife. Outraged at the conspiracy against her sister, Queen Brunhilda and Queen Fredegund became fierce rivals. Even the interventions of King Guntram I of Orleans, r. 561–592, and Bishop Germain of Paris could only prevent hostilities temporarily. While Neustria and Austrasia would go to war and Frankish men fought on the battlefield, the true war was being waged in the shadows between the two queens. By the 570s, Austrasia was winning the war against Neustria, having occupied most of the Neustrian territories. While Neustrian locals were swearing loyalty to Sigebert, Chilperic hid in Tournai. Bishop Germain of Paris wrote to Brunhilda and pleaded with her to calm her husband's rage so that he might spare Chilperic's life, but Brunhilda, on her path to revenge, ignored the bishop's letters. However, the tides turned as Fredegund sent two assassins who killed Sigebert with poisoned daggers during the siege of Tournai. In 596, at the age of 26, King Childebert II died. His two sons, Theudebert II, 595–612, and Theoderic II, 595–613, succeeded him on the thrones of Austrasia and Burgundy respectively. Though Austrasia and Burgundy were two separate kingdoms once more, they were still united against Neustria and continued the war against Clothar II and Fredegund. Likewise, Brunhilda still maintained influence over her grandsons. Even as Brunhilda's longtime rival Fredegund died, her son Clothar II continued the war with ambitions similar to that of his ancestor and namesake Clothar I, 511–558. Who had united Francia half a century earlier with Neustria as the seat of that empire. Unfortunately for Fredegund's heir, Austrasian and Burgundian attacks in 600 left Clothar ruling a rump state that administered only Beauvais, Amiens, and Rouen. From this point, the eastern faction began to tear itself apart. Brunhilda took on a lover named Protadius and sought to award him more power by having Berthold, the mayor of the Palace of Burgundy, killed. The mayor of the palace was a special position held by those who managed the household of the king in Francia, a position with some privileges and access to power. In 604, Brunhilda had Theoderic of Burgundy send Berthold to a villa on the Seine River. Following Brunhilda's orders, Clothar II also sent his own mayor of the palace named Landric to meet Berthold. The Neustrians found the Burgundian mayor and killed him with Brunhilda able to place her lover in Berthold's place. Seeking to expand the power of Burgundy over Austrasia, Brunhilda and Protadius persuaded Theoderic to go to war with Theudebert, telling the Burgundian king that his brother was the son of a gardener. However, Burgundian warriors who refused to fight in the name of Brunhilda captured and killed Protadius. A heartbroken Brunhilda ordered the man who killed her lover to be arrested, tortured, and executed. In 611, the Burgundian-Austrasian War continued as Theoderic promised to restore the Duchy of Dentelin to Clothair's rump Neustrian state in return for his neutrality in the conflict. In 612 CE, Burgundy was victorious in the war with Austrasia, with the Burgundians overthrowing Theudebert and killing both him and his son. Austrasia-Burgundy was united once again under the rule of King Theoderic II until he soon died of dysentery. Theoderic had 4 sons but, rather than divide the empire again, Brunhilda herself decided that only Theoderic's son Sigebert II, 613, would rule the Austrasian-Burgundian realm. As Brunhilda purged those who stood in her way, many of the Austrasian and Burgundian aristocrats fled to Neustria into the court of Clothair II, supporting Neustria against Brunhilda. The mayor of the Palace of Austrasia, Warnachar, felt concerned about the young king Sigebert and that he would become, like the Austrasian kings before him, just another puppet for his great-grandmother. Warnachar as well as other mayors like Rado, Pepin of Landen, and Arnulf of Metz fled to Neustria to join their side against Austrasia. As war broke out between Neustria and Austrasia-Burgundy, Brunhilda led the battle against Clothair II, the son of her old enemy, in the Battle of Ain. More Austrasian and Burgundian dukes betrayed their queen, defecting to Neustria during the battle. This turned the tide so that Brunhilda and Sigebert II had to flee the battlefield. The monarchs fled to the city of Orb in what is now Switzerland to seek Germanic allies, but Neustrian forces captured them. Brunhilda's sons, including King Sigebert II, were all killed with the exception of one Prince Merovec who, like the Merovec before him, managed to escape a premature death at the cost of living his life in a medieval monastery. Clothair assumed leadership over Austrasia-Burgundy and, after 52 years, the Kingdom of Francia was all under the crown of one ruler again, with Clothair II being the third king of a united Francia. Clothair accused Brunhilda of the death of 10 Frankish royal family members and churchmen. The Frankish soldiers declared that death would be most fitting for the unpopular queen. As the method of execution, Brunhilda's limbs were tied to wild horses who ran off in different directions. Her remains were burned so that no trace of her was left. Queen Brunhilda's legacy is mixed. She is praised for her morality, virtue, and intelligence while simultaneously criticized as being power-hungry and driven to a fault. While her Visigothic origins served as a sticking point with the Germanic population of Francia, she simultaneously had influence in Austrasia even after her death, as King Clothair II had to vilify her legacy and place Francia's problems on her memory in an effort to unite the kingdom and antagonize the pro-Brunhilda forces that resisted his rule. Nevertheless, Brunhilda goes down in history as a queen of great power and influence despite living in a time when women were not allowed to sit upon the Frankish throne.